You have big dreams of losing weight and creating a healthy, joyful life. But you find yourself craving sugar, caught up in what the scale says, and diet hopping. Dieting is the old way of losing weight. And the good news is I'm going to give you a new way of eating so you can ditch diets for good and build a healthy relationship with real food. My name is Megan Olson, certified nutrition practitioner, creator of Skinny Fitalicious, and your host of the Dish on Diets show.
Hello friends, today we're talking about the carnivore diet for weight loss and whether or not it's safe for your health. In the last podcast episode, I talked about low-carb diets and why they are not necessary for weight loss. Why low-carb, especially for women over 35, can make their weight loss journey harder and almost impossible to maintain because, like I always say, if you cannot follow a way of eating until you are 85 years old, the weight will come back. Now, if you have taken my free weight loss class, I talk about the real problem is that women never sustain their weight loss doing all these different type of diet programs. And it's because they are going about losing weight and eating in a way to lose weight that they could never maintain until they're 85 years old. By the way, if you have not taken my free weight loss class for women over 35, the link is in the show notes of this podcast. You can grab it there. But if you are planning to eat this way until you're 85 years old, right? That's a kind of diet you are going to follow, then you can keep weight off. But typically that's not what people try to do. They try to crash diet, do something really strange with their diet for a short period of time to get some results, and then they go back to how they were eating, and then all the weight eventually comes back. And then we do this yo-yo thing. So that is the real problem most women over 35 face when it comes to sustainable weight loss. Remember, there's no point in losing weight if you can't maintain it. Additionally, women fear carbohydrates because of all the fear-mongering that they've heard around carbohydrates, and women also misunderstand what foods are truly carbohydrates. Foods like cookies, chips, cake, pizza, ice cream, granola are mostly fat sources because the majority of the calories are coming from fat, not from carbohydrates. But people mentally associate these foods mistakenly as carbs, and then they cut them out of their diet. And then inevitably what they end up doing is eating more nutrient-dense foods. Then they feel better. They lose some weight. Usually it's water weight and muscle at first. And then they assume, well, it was the carbs, when it really was that they just cut out a significant amount of nutrient-void foods out of their diet. Nutrient-void foods that were high calorie. That's really what did it. But I'm jumping ahead. If you didn't hear my last podcast on why low-carb diets are not necessary for women over 35, even if you have hormone issues, even if you're in menopause, even if you have insulin resistance, PCOS, or are pre-diabetic, it's really important for you to go back and listen to that podcast episode before you go further with listening to this carnivore episode, because I want you to understand, first of all, why we see quick results with low carb, why the scale goes down quickly with low carb, because that's not fat loss. That's just scale loss, and that's not the same. So you need to have that baseline understanding first. So in this episode, what I want to do today is first discuss what carnivore is, how it became popular, why some people feel better on it, and who might actually benefit from following that type of diet. So first of all, let's talk about what the carnivore diet is. There's a lot of variations to this diet, but it, originally was not eating any plants. Most people on this diet are eating some variation of animal foods only. Things like meat, sticks of butter, raw cheese, sometimes cheese and eggs. This diet was largely popularized by somebody named Paul Saladino. He used to call himself the Carnivore MD. He wrote a book on this diet in 2020, but the reason he doesn't call himself Carnivore MD is that he developed health issues from following this diet. Since then, he actually started eating more plants and fruits and vegetables and sort of renamed this diet as the animal-based diet. So you'll see some people saying, I'm doing animal-based. It's sort of a spin-off of carnivore. So in 2020, he wrote this book, and after he convinced millions of people to follow the carnivore diet, last year in 2024, he came out saying he was experiencing all these negative consequences to his health following this diet, and that he was going to now start including some plant foods in his diet, some fruits and vegetables. Hence, we now have this animal-based diet kind of spinoff. And so he became very popular on social media with millions of followers. And the reason for that is because when you have a contrary opinion or a contrary belief to something, and you have some kind of perceived credibility with the public, and you're very confident in what you say, you can convince a lot of people of things that are just simply not factually true. Especially on social media where things go viral easily and when alternative belief systems are so attractive to people. For example, the dietary guidelines say eating a ton of red meat is not ideal and eating plants and fruits and vegetables is extremely important. Now, that doesn't mean we never eat red meat or red meat is bad for you. It just means eating a ton of it is not ideal for your health. That's what the dietary guidelines say. What you'll notice with people like Paul Saladino is they will sort of twist that and say they're telling you not to ever eat red meat, which is not what the message is. That's not the dietary guideline. So when someone comes in who seems credible and has a doctor or an MD in their name and they say, hey, actually, these people who are giving you these dietary guidelines, these people are trying to kill you. You know, the reality is you don't need these foods. These foods are going to kill you if you keep eating them. It's not good for your health, which is actually literally something he has said. He has villainized compounds in health foods on his social media, like everything you can think of under the sun, he has villainized. One example is spinach. He said spinach contains oxalates, which can build up and lead to kidney stones in individuals who are consuming low amounts of calcium and have genetic susceptibility to getting kidney stones. So eating spinach in the context of a low calcium diet, it can lead to the production of kidney stones. But you can take that information and tell the public, oxalates in spinach leads to kidney stones, and you can leave out that context. The fact that, hey, if you're on a low calcium diet, it could lead to kidney stones. He doesn't say that kind of stuff, right? That's what a lot of these people don't actually do. They partially tell you the truth, and then they kind of scare you about things, leaving out the context of that. And so if you're telling somebody, hey, spinach leads to kidney stones, leaving out the context of the fact that they don't actually do that unless it's, somebody who's doing a low calcium diet and you are genetically predispositioned, they're kind of lying to you. They're twisting the truth. And this is what people on social media are doing. And this is what this guy has effectively done and why he's gained millions of followers. He talks about how dangerous every single plant food is, how everything is an anti-nutrient. He has scared many people out of eating plant foods that are known to be health promoting, like fruits and vegetables. Like, it's crazy that we are now in a time where we have to convince people eating more fruits and vegetables is good for their health because of people like him. So what Paul has done has created content to scare people away from eating plant foods as a way to get people to follow his diet. He has built a company selling liver supplements because if you are only eating red meat, you are going to be lacking in a lot of nutrients. And if you are not eating organ meats, organ meats can actually fill a lot of these gaps. But here's the thing, most people don't really enjoy eating organ meats. So most people are not going to eat them to fill their nutritional gaps. So if you tell people, hey, you can only eat red meat and sticks of butter, but you need to eat organ meats because you're going to be lacking a lot of nutrients, most people aren't going to be on board with that. They're not going to want to sign up for that kind of diet. He has built a multi-million-dollar supplement company selling organ supplements to promote this carnivore diet. Paul is now following a diet that includes some plant foods because, like I said, he experienced in 2024 negative health issues from just eating butter and red meat for several years. And he came out and said this on social media. So if you actually listen to his story prior to doing carnivore, he was having all kinds of digestive issues and he just felt better taking away plant foods. And that's why he started promoting this diet, because it worked for him. So before we move forward, there's two things that I feel are always red flags when you're trying to find nutrition information. Number one red flag is when somebody is selling their own line of supplements. Right? They have this supplement company and they're trying to get you to purchase these supplements. They're going to have a narrative or a diet or a way of eating or something, right, that supports that so that they can make money. Number two red flag is when somebody is selling you a way of eating just because it helped them. These are red flags that the individual is not actually credible, even if they are a doctor. And I hate to say that. Unfortunately, there are doctors misleading the public and profiting off of what they're telling the public. And also, doctors are not certified in nutrition. I don't know how many times I need to say this. They only get about 2 classes in medical school in nutrition. There is an entire field of nutrition for a reason. I mean, you wouldn't go to a dentist for a broken bone. Why would you go to a doctor and expect to get good quality nutrition advice from your doctor? They are not schooled in it, and they technically are outside of their scope of practice when they are telling somebody, hey, go do keto, or go do this diet, or go do Jenny Craig. They're outside of the scope of practice. They should not be doing that. They should be referring people out unless they have advanced nutrition training. They're just not trained in nutrition. And this is why we have dietitians, we have nutritionists, people who have actually studied the field of nutrition. I mean, if you go to your doctor and say, my shoulder has been hurting me, your doctor would not be doing surgery on your shoulder. They should be referring you to an orthopedic. Why, when it comes to nutrition, doctors are not referring people out to nutritionists and dietitians? I don't know. I can't quite explain that, but they do that with all other fields. So for you, you need to be empowered so you understand if something is off in your diet, if you are not getting the nutrition you need or you're struggling in your weight loss, you need to see somebody who actually specializes in this field and not just expect your doctor to tell you to go do some BS diet, okay? But the thing is when you start doing something like this guy has been doing on social media for several years, if it becomes viral, like plants are killing you, and then people see this person who is an MD who's explaining it in a way that seems sort of credible, and you're just scrolling through social media, you're like, wow, this makes sense. It can be really easy for you to fall into these belief systems and just falling for this stuff. You know, when we find information that is far from the norm, we tend to latch onto it thinking, this must be why I'm not losing weight. Or this must be why, I feel bloated when I eat vegetables. The problem is he's just making a lot of things up, like a lot of the people that we see on social media. This content has really created, the carnivore content, in my opinion, has really created a lot of harm for people. I have had several of my nutrition clients, women over 35, who have done carnivore and other extremely low carb diets like keto, and now they're scared of eating perfectly healthy foods. They've been afraid of eating them from watching these type of misleading social media posts. And now there's also a lot of wellness influencers doing the same thing because they realize this is a good marketing strategy. There's this one lady called Steak and Butter Girl. She used to be a vegan, and now she's been doing carnivore for several years, and literally she just only eats sticks of butter, red meat, and drinks raw milk. And I commented on one of her posts last year, and my comment has over 2,000 likes as of today and counting, because every day I go into Instagram and there's more people who have liked and liked and liked this comment that I left, because I said in my comment that heart disease takes many, many years and decades to develop. And I also said how she was doing something very, very restrictive like vegan and now swinging in the opposite direction of doing something very, very restrictive like carnivore. And how she has just swung from one restrictive diet to another restrictive diet and how that's not actually healthy. Now, do not misconstrue what I'm saying. I'm not saying vegan is bad. But when somebody is doing vegan for the wrong reasons, i.e. because they have disordered eating patterns and a poor relationship with food like this lady does, that is not healthy. That is disordered. Recently, this lady actually said in a video on her Instagram that she had only been eating 1,200 calories or something of that nature. And she mentioned how she was starving her body before doing carnivore while she was doing vegan. I had been just waiting for the day to see her post that video because I knew from watching all of her videos there was disordered eating going on. She was not feeding her body properly. And here she is now today, passing on to her millions of followers her disordered eating, acting as though this is healthy. She has millions of followers blindly following her advice. It is insane. It actually makes me a little concerned for humanity, that so many people are not actually seeing what I see when I watch her videos. So now the thing is, people have been doing this carnivore diet for a couple of years. There are some people who are starting to develop major health issues from the carnivore diet. But before we talk about the dangers of carnivore to your health, let's discuss first why some people do feel better when they do this diet and other low-carb diets. And this is one of the reasons why I feel like this dietary approach is so dangerous. So what is going to happen for most people who have been just eating like a regular American diet or a balanced, healthy diet, I guess? When you go on carnivore, which is a very high saturated fat diet and high protein diet, it's going to feel very satiating. So you're going to feel very full very quickly. And you're going to lose a lot of water weight very quickly because you're not eating carbohydrates. So all the stored carbohydrates in your body and your muscles, they're going to get used off within the first couple of days. You'll lose a bunch of water weight essentially. That's why the scale goes down so rapidly, and that's what I talked about in my last podcast episode. So you'll lose a lot of water weight. You'll be feeling fuller from eating extremely high saturated fat and protein, and you're eating very, very low fiber, almost no fiber. So your digestive system in many cases is going to feel better. You're going to feel less going on in your digestive system because your body is not having to digest fiber, which can be difficult to digest because fiber is something you have to build a tolerance up to eating. 95% of Americans are not meeting the recommendations for fiber regularly. So when they do eat something high fiber like beans and broccoli and whole grains, they start to feel bloated and uncomfortable from that fiber that's being digested. And often people will correlate in their head that they just shouldn't be eating those foods, when most of the time it's the opposite. People need to build up a tolerance of regularly consuming fiber so their body can get used to breaking down and digesting fiber so that it will feel more comfortable over time. People, though, with like IBS, UC, Crohn's do need to be careful about fiber if you have that condition and have been diagnosed with that condition. But outside of those conditions, typically an individual who has not been eating enough fiber regularly, that is why they have been experiencing digestive issues when they eat those high fiber foods. This is something you got to build a tolerance up to. You can't just suddenly go on a high fiber diet because most people are going to notice a lot of digestive distress. So yes, a lot of people feel better when they take out high fiber foods. The other side of this is that carnivore is an extreme elimination diet. In a previous podcast that I did a while back, which I'll link in the show notes for you, I discussed Whole30 and how Whole30 is actually an elimination diet. It is not a weight loss diet, even though a lot of people use Whole30 as a weight loss diet. Carnivore is also an extreme elimination diet similar to Whole30. You're taking everything out. You're taking out dairy, soy, peanuts, seafood, gluten. These are common food allergies. common intolerances and sensitivities. So what you're doing is eliminating the potential sensitivities. And for many people with autoimmune conditions and GI issues, taking away those foods can help them feel better because they're removing foods that they are allergic to or intolerant to. Like if somebody has a sensitivity to dairy and gluten, they could have just taken those two foods out and felt better without having to ever go on this extreme diet. And so that's kind of one of the negative things about this diet. You're cutting out all these things potentially unnecessarily. You could still have more flexibility with your diet, but maybe it's just a few things that really need to be eliminated. So the other reason people tend to feel better when they do carnivore is because you're just eating overall fewer calories. You're staying fuller from that high saturated fat and from more protein. This is one of many reasons why you'll always hear me preach the importance of protein and healthy fats and good balanced meals. Because specifically, when you are not eating adequate protein, you're going to oversnack, your calories are going to be higher. And even when your meals are not balanced properly, you don't have complex carbs, you don't have fiber, healthy fats, you don't have enough of that lean protein, you're going to snack more. Your calories are going to be higher. And I see this consistently across the board when I see clients, women over 35. I've been doing this for 11 years. I've never seen a client who was eating good balanced meals with enough calories, and they were always consistently snacking too much throughout the day. The snacks, the high calories, that's really the problem, and not having good balanced meals with enough calories. So when somebody goes on carnivore and has lost body fat, not just scale weight. Let's say they've done carnivore for like 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, whatever, and now they've started to lose some body fat. The only reason they lost body fat was because they were eating fewer calories, because they were staying fuller and more satisfied. They were in a calorie deficit. So this diet is just a way, it's just a means to help you get into that calorie deficit, okay? A lot of people will also say, hey, I feel less inflamed when I eat this way. 2 reasons for that. Number 1, excess body fat does create inflammation. It is inflammatory. Hence why being a healthy body fat percentage is really important. Second, sometimes people feel inflamed, but that is really water retention, and that could be for a variety of reasons: hormones, stress, lack of sleep, exercise. There's so many reasons why that could be going on. So people who go on carnivore, they're like, oh my God, my inflammation went down. Well, I'm not surprised because 1, they lost water weight from cutting out carbohydrates, and 2, they may have lost some body fat, which is inflammatory. So of course your inflammation went down, okay? But you could do that with just a regular old calorie deficit, eating normal foods with a well-balanced diet that includes everything you like. So let's get back to the weight loss, okay? People who do carnivore, who lose a lot of weight at first, they are losing a lot of weight at first because they're depleting their glycogen stores. And that loss of water weight is super motivating for people. And so they keep following carnivore and lose more weight because it's very difficult to overeat on a high saturated fat and high protein diet. You're going to stay fuller. So you're not going to be walking around snacking all the time, eating high calorie snacks. And sometimes you're not eating that much of the snacks. You're eating little things, but they're very high calorie. This is why people will always say to me, I'm barely eating and I don't understand how I'm gaining weight. I'm barely eating. You're barely eating because you're eating very low volume, high calorie stuff, right? So the stuff you're eating is too high in calorie. So when people who are on carnivore, right, are finding it that they're actually losing body fat over time after that initial water weight loss, they're staying fuller. They're not snacking all the time, right? Their calories are more managed. So in essence, their calories are lower than how they were eating before. That's what causes the body fat loss. People think that it's for some magical reason. Carnivore magically helped me lose weight. No, it's not. It's the overall reduction of calories that creates the body fat loss through cutting out a ton of foods. And this is why, from a marketing standpoint, it is so easy for these influencers to get people to follow this diet. They feel better, they lose body fat, and so they think it's magical. Now, I will say on the flip side, there are some people who feel terrible on this diet. A lot of people in on social media get blocked out of the comments of these carnivore people's posts and pages. And one of the ways that these people protect their narrative about this diet being so magical and great is they'll ignore you and block you on social media. There was a man who was following this diet, and he, a very young man, had a stroke, and he tagged all the carnivore people on social media and asked them why they thought that he had a stroke at a young age. No one responded, and he was blocked. Do you think that if this is a credible diet that is going around, that people would be blocking this guy? I don't think so. I think there's something wrong if we have to shut somebody down. And there's a lot of people who I've heard stories about that happening to. The carnivore diet is dangerous to your health long term. Extremely elevated cholesterol levels, hair loss, constipation, explosive diarrhea, loss of menstrual cycles, just to name a few. And the reason being, you're taking away all the plant foods. You're taking away all the polyphenols, micronutrients, phytonutrients, fiber, and then you're stacking your diet with saturated fat from animal foods. Saturated fat is not the most health-promoting fat source. It is probably the worst naturally occurring fat source we can consume at high levels. Notice I didn't say we shouldn't consume it at all. We need a little bit of it, but we don't need that much. And there are a lot of people who are, pushing this narrative that we need a lot of red meat. No, we don't. At high levels, what that actually does, especially those who are genetically susceptible, and I want you to listen careful, it's going to change the expression of the LDL receptor at the liver. Why is that important? Well, if we are eating high levels of saturated fat, the LDL receptor at the liver will take in less LDL, which will allow for more LDL particles to circulate in the blood, which will increase your risk for cardiovascular disease. Cardiovascular disease does not happen in 1 year. 2 years, not even sometimes 5 years. It happens 10, 20, 30 years down the road. It takes a long time to develop. Your liver is the thing that processes your cholesterol. And now if you're eating high saturated fats, you're literally changing that expression of your LDL receptor at the liver so your liver can no longer take it in, and now it's just circulating. So while you might be doing carnivore and you might be perfectly healthy now, or even 3 years from now doing this diet, it can only be a matter of time before you have a stroke or a heart attack from consuming this high amount of saturated fat, which the carnivore diet promotes. LDL builds up over time. I've literally seen people on social media, these meathead bros who are like, more LDL is better. You need to work on getting your LDL up. I've seen people post things like, my LDL is at 300 or 500. Should I be concerned? And these people are literally like, don't listen to your doctor. Don't worry. You're going to be just fine. Okay. This would be no different than you pouring Crisco down your sink all the time. Over time, what do you think is going to happen if you poured Crisco down your sink? It's going to build up and it's going to cause a blockage in your plumbing. Not exactly the same as what happens in your body, but similar, right? To what is going to happen in your body over time. It's not going to happen right away, but over time, the way that these fats develop into plaque and they calcify. So if you're eating high saturated fat and low fiber, and we know fiber also helps to clear LDL cholesterol. It binds to cholesterol, helps to clear it. Now it becomes the perfect storm for increasing your cholesterol and increasing your risk for cardiovascular disease down the road. You're taking in all your calories from protein and high saturated fat, and your metabolic machinery has a very limited capacity to metabolize protein and saturated fats. So what's happening is these fats are circulating in your system for long periods of time. We don't want high levels of fat circulating in your system. We also don't want high levels of sugar recirculating in your system. This is what causes damage. Excess energy recirculating in your blood. If you have too much energy circulating in your blood from sugar, you get diabetes, right? If you have too much levels of fat recirculating in your blood, we start to see cardiovascular disease risk go up. So when people are eating these very high fat diets, their triglycerides go up and their LDL cholesterol is extremely high all day long because their body is struggling to clear that from the blood. And this is a problem for your cardiovascular system. We also know people who eat high levels of animal foods are at an increased risk of cancer. People who include plants in their diets are at a lower risk for developing cancer as plants are protective against cancer. If you replace some of the fat with carbohydrates high in fiber, your triglycerides are going to be lower, your glucose is going to be better improved because fiber is slower to digest, and your body is going to be able to better process energy efficiently. But when you're completely ignoring balanced nutrition in your diet and ignoring your body's limited metabolic capacity to metabolize high fat and protein, this really does create the perfect storm for you to have some serious health consequences down the line. And again, your genetics are going to dictate that. So I will say we don't have long-term research on people eating this way, like high levels of saturated fat in animal foods. But based on what we do know, it's highly likely to increase your risk for developing some serious health issues later on in life. The challenge is diseases like cancer and cardiovascular disease, they don't develop overnight. You don't feel heart disease coming on. You don't feel diabetes or cancer coming on. This is why we have annual labs done, and you're probably not going to experience a problem until, year 10, 15, or 20. That's when it's really going to start to stack up. Year 1, year 3, year 5, probably not so much. I know, maybe for some people, it depends on where you're starting, depends on how high risk you are, your genetics, etc. This diet is no doubt, in my mind, harmful. In terms of fad diets, I believe it's going to go down as one of the most harmful diets. Other PhD nutritionists, I've heard them say the same thing. People who are going to get heart disease 20 or 30 years later as a result of doing the carnivore diet, they may not realize it's a result of doing this dietary approach. But like I said, it takes years for this stuff to happen. And I say this all the time. People will do any stupid thing with their diet all in the name of weight loss, not realizing there can be really severe health consequences to the diet that they are following. Recently, I had a woman message me on Instagram saying her friend wanted to lose weight, and her doctor told her friend to do carnivore because she needed to shock her system because her body wasn't going to let go of any weight. This is absolutely 100% without a doubt dangerous advice. If your doctor is telling you to do some bullshit diet like this, that's going to be harmful to your health, I'm sorry, get a new doctor. I don't know what's going on. I don't know why doctors are ever saying these kind of things. Remember what I said earlier. Doctors are not trained in nutrition. If you don't know what to do to lose weight or you're struggling, find an expert. Doctors do not have the training in this field. Medical school is only giving doctors approximately 2 classes. Your doctor is not a reliable source for nutrition. I'm so sorry this is happening, by the way. I've had many clients come to me. My doctor told me, just to do keto, or my doctor told me to cut out all plants. What doctor on the planet thinks it's healthy not to eat fruits and vegetables? I want to know who you are because your license should be revoked. There are only really specific cases where that might be something that should be going on. But if you're a doctor telling your patient not to eat fruits and vegetables, which we literally know are protective against developing diseases like cancer and diabetes and heart disease, what are we doing? In my opinion, that is not a credible doctor at all. And the thing is, if you've truly been spinning your wheels to lose weight, I understand how frustrating that is. But why spin your wheels and potentially put your health at serious risk doing something stupid like carnivore? This is serious stuff, gang. The fact that I even have to combat the stupidity from a doctor really blows my mind. It's so unfortunate. We are in an age where doctors are marketing things to people and trying to profit off of people doing stupid things with their diet and their health. So if you've been considering doing carnivore, I want you to first consider your health. Are you putting your health at risk? Second, ask yourself, can you truly only eat meat and butter until the day you die to keep any weight you lose off until you're 85 years old? You're never going to have birthday cake. Never again. Never going to enjoy ice cream with your grandkids. Never bake cookies at the holidays with your kids. You're going to eat just meat and butter until the day you die. Because I want to remind you, there is no such thing as losing weight and going back to how you were eating before losing weight and keeping the weight off. You will not keep the weight off. People always mistakenly think they can do that. That's not how you keep weight off long term. So before you consider doing any diet, please keep in mind this one thing. Can you keep eating that way until you're 85 years old to keep the weight off? That's the first thing you must honestly ask yourself. I know sometimes we are so desperate for a solution, but that is really one of the dangers of these trendy diets. They prey on your desperation for a quick solution, and you are desperate. So you're willing to do just about anything, and you're like, sure, I'll do that. And you're not really thinking like down the road. Can I do this? Is this something that's even going to be healthy? Are there going to be like some serious health consequences? Like I told you, I have seen clients who have done these diets. Their hair was falling out. That's not healthy. If your hair is falling out on a diet, that is a sign of nutritional deficiency. It's also a sign that something might be off with your thyroid. So people will do these things and think this is absolutely normal. That's crazy. Why are we doing crazy things? And we don't even have to do crazy things. If we learn to balance our plates and we learn how to eat within our energy requirements, this can be a lot easier and very doable for the rest of your life and include all the foods that you really enjoy eating. So I understand the desperation. I was there. I once thought if I could just eat cantaloupe and carrots for a couple of weeks, I could lose the weight. And in my mind, and that was really something I did before I lost all my weight, in my mind, I truly thought to myself, well, if I just eat carrots and cantaloupe, I'll lose weight. And then, I'll just go back to how I was eating. It never crossed my mind. It never dawned on me like, well, how am I actually going to keep this off? I didn't know how to eat. And that was the truth of the matter. I had to learn how to eat. We're not taught how to eat. Nutrition is not taught in schools. In fact, cooking isn't even taught in schools anymore. I have to sometimes work with my clients on and teach them how to cook an egg or teach them how to make a bowl of oatmeal. Some of them don't even know how to do some of these things. We're not taught. So we need to learn how to feed our bodies. Most of us don't know. And so then we do these wacky diets and then we get frustrated because we can never maintain weight and then we feel hopeless. We need to learn that this doesn't work. Doing these quick fixes, while they do give you some results, if you can't do it forever, weight's going to come back. So if you've been struggling with your weight, consider seeing a nutritionist. See a specialist. I mean, if you were struggling with a toothache, you would go to the dentist, right? Go to an expert. And please be wary of these type of people on social media, even if they are doctors. Chances are, if they're trying to scare you about something with some kind of health food and nutrition, they are misleading you. And they're purposely misleading you to market to you something to buy or something that they're affiliated with or to get you to do their diet, right? So that they gain followers. And a lot of times these people are monetizing their social media platforms. So with more followers and comments and likes, they're making more money. It's unfortunate, but that is the new time that we are living in. So be wary of these things. Okay. I hope I answered all your questions on carnivore today. I think I hit the big points, but if you have any questions, reach out to me. I hope that this episode was helpful to you. And hey, if you liked this episode, please share it with somebody and please consider leaving a 5-star rating and review in Apple Podcasts or Spotify, as that helps other women over 35 find this show. Talk to you soon. Hey, if you enjoyed this podcast, you have to come check out my free weight loss class. It's the 5 steps to lasting weight loss, how hormones impact weight loss, and the truth about lasting weight loss without relying on willpower, workouts, or deprivation. Click the link in the show notes to watch that free class today. And if you are a woman over 35 with 20 to 50 or more pounds to lose, schedule a free weight loss breakthrough session with me after you watch that class. And let's talk about your 20 to 50 or more pound weight loss plan.